Hey, Darcie, what a delight to have you here today to chat about waiting on God.
I am delighted to be here.
Awesome. Let's talk about it. You discuss in the article on butterfly living how hard it is to wait. Why do you think we dislike waiting so much?
That's pretty easy at first because we are used to instant gratification in our world. I like feel really old right now because I'm thinking about just like when I had dial-up internet. Like my kids don't know what that is. They don't know what it's like to like have an atlas to figure out where you're going on a road trip. I listened to a podcast the other day. It was Back Porch Theology, and Dr. Howard said we have lost the art of waiting.
Hmm,
And, I think that's just due to like technology and being able to have all of our answers at our fingertips and just how fast our world is moving now.
you're right. We live in a Starbucks world. We want things exactly how we want them immediately.
Yes, yes. And so I would say another thing that's so hard for us when we're waiting is definitely just wrestling with doubt. One
Hmm.
of my favorite quotes is doubt will kill more dreams than failures ever will. And I feel
Doubt
like
will kill more dreams than failure.
ever will.
Ah,
Yes.
that's a great quote.
Yes. And I mean, that's just talking about anything in general in life.
Yes.
Like if you have
Yes.
a dream to write a book or to run a marathon and you doubt yourself along the way, more than likely you will succeed. It's more the doubt that you instill in yourself that, causes you to shrink back and not achieve. And I think, when you haven't seen a specific promise that maybe God has given to you come to fulfillment, you start to doubt, you start to ask all those questions, did I really hear him right? Did I hear him
Right.
correctly? Are you really there, God? Are you really working everything for for the good according to your purpose? Especially when you're waiting for big things in life, for a spouse, for a child, for, your dream job, whatever it is, you start to question yourself and doubt in that waiting period.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
really
think,
good. That's so
yeah.
true. And to jump into to the next question we talked about, so God's promises, how does that help you tolerate the waiting? Or should I say get better at waiting? Is there a way that holding on to those promises have helped you in the waiting?
When I read this question, I thought the first thing I want to tell people honestly is that I've learned that I'm really good about preaching on waiting well on God than when I'm actually at doing that.
Probably most
Um,
of us could say that.
I would say, ironically enough, also when dealing with a little discouragement recently from something that I thought 99% sure God wanted me to do, I opened up your email that day and started reading the questions for this. And I thought, man, he's like even using my own words like against me to like, maybe it's a little bit reassurance and comforting and teach me, but it's also a little irritating. I'm like, yes, I did write that. And I'm not doing a very good job at this. Um, but waiting well on God is just, well, it's a whole different way of living. If you speak to anyone who's walked with Christ for a long time, for a while, they're going to tell you that waiting is just part of it. It's God's timing, not ours. Our expectations rarely line up with what God's plan is for us. And of course, our timeline is certainly not the same as his.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, but he's never slow in fulfilling his promises. He's always working things for his good and his purpose and his kingdom. And I think when we long for something, a promise that we have in our heart, I think that just makes us long for Christ more and we pursue him more in the wait. And maybe that's just what it's all about. Maybe it's about nurturing our relationship with
Yeah.
Christ more.
I heard this recently. What if waiting on God, if we looked at it like when we waited for Christmas as a child, we couldn't wait to see what is God going to do in this situation. And so instead of impatience, we're anticipating. And I just
Mm-hmm.
love that to tie in what you said. Well, can you
That's funny because,
elaborate?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's right. Can
I
you
was just going to
elaborate?
say,
Go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say when you said that, I thought that is so funny. Like the Holy Spirit must be speaking through us because we moved on from one of the things from like what I dislike about waiting, and one of the things was just like about the deadline. You know, like we impose our own deadline, and I said it's kind of like it's so hard when you have something on your heart so bad, you want something so badly. Maybe it's a child, and you haven't been able to, you know, conceive a child or adopt a child or whatever, and so it's like you think by now I would have it. It's almost like waking up on Christmas morning, but realizing that Santa hasn't come yet. And that's
Mm,
kind of like how discouragement feels to me.
yes.
But Christmas is coming. You know, we're guaranteed this. The day will come when Christ will come back. There will be no more tears and no more pain. There will be no more waiting. All his promises will be fulfilled. So I'm glad you said that because it just reminded me of what what I had thought to say. So
We're so
anyway.
excited we're talking over each other, but this is such a great topic. I just love that you wrote about God's promises and waiting. So, with that, can you elaborate on the 4 vital things to remember when you're waiting for God's promises to be fulfilled?
Sure. So they all kind of interrelate, first of all, basically on God's character of always being the same. You know, I wrote that God is not fickle like us. And so fickle is an adjective basically describing how we frequently waver in things, especially regards to our loyalties, maybe our beliefs, our interests, our affection, and to know that we serve a God that loves us, a Father that loves us, that doesn't waver like us. You know, we waver. One day I can have faith the size of a mustard seed. The next day it'll be a mountain. You know, I'm just all over the place sometimes. But also, we've kind of discussed this already. God is always working for our good of the ones he loves. So Romans 8:28 tells us that it's actually a conditional promise. So he's working, he loves, sorry, hold on. He's working for those who are called according to his purpose.
Yes.
So our love for God is demonstrated through obedience to his word and aligning our lives with his purpose, and it allows us to experience the fullness of this promise. The other two were basically, you know, God's the same. Hebrews 13:8, you know, he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He always keeps his promises to his children. We can look in the Bible and see where many promises have been fulfilled. Yeah. So, and I mean, it just, his promises stand. There's no doubt in it, no doubt in my mind that everything will come to fruition.
That's beautiful. I even love the word promise. I love
Yeah.
it's just got, it's so hopeful, you know, it's just a hope-filled word. So our last question is, okay, so you cover 5 promises, beautiful promises God fulfilled in Exodus that we can read about. And I think it's very encouraging to study Exodus. So how does this encourage you, these promises in Exodus that you write about while you wait?
Well, I'll say first of all, the 5 promises that I wrote about were offspring, land, blessing, covenant mediator, and covenant presence. Sorry. I would say overall, just the story of Exodus. And if you need to recall, you know, it's about the plagues in Egypt and the people let his people go. That's the famous thing we always chanted as children in VBS and stuff like that. The story of the exit of the Israelites, of him bringing them freedom from their bondage in Egypt, is hard. It's a hard story. It's kind of a, you know, a strange story. Like, why would God, you know, continually harden Pharaoh's heart and then, like, you know, have all these plagues that keep happening? But he kept doing that because he wants everybody to know that he is the one true God. Because there was other, you know, Pharaoh had other magicians and stuff that also could do signs and stuff like that. But getting to the point here, in his in the way that he brought his people out of the land, he also, Egyptians also followed him. Some Egyptians also followed him.
Yeah.
So there was a remnant of people that needed to see this, his almighty presence, and say, oh yeah, that's him. But overall, I would say reading about these promises, as hard as they are, that one, we witness how God uses the wilderness, their waiting period, to produce the most growth in faith and dependency on him. But also, he's always turning what was meant for evil into good, just like with the plagues. And my favorite part, my favorite takeaway is all of this took place while witnessing God's provision. Okay, so the Israelites witnessed God's provision repeatedly. They witnessed his powerful signs of God through Moses, and yet they still turned their back on him. They still grumbled, they complained, they didn't trust him. They literally have a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. He parts the sea, all these things. And I think, wow, if he was so forgiving to his children that were literally witnessing his presence,
Right.
every day, how much more merciful and gracious is he to us, a generation that walks by faith and not by sight.
That's
And I
awesome.
think
That's
that's
great.
my biggest takeaway
That's a
is
huge,
that,
his great
that,
mercy. You're right. His
right,
great mercy, because we're all waiting for something.
right.
That's
We
just
are.
beautiful final takeaway. Well, I just love this article. It does very well because I think a lot of people are waiting and a lot of people are encouraged by God's promises. So, for anyone who wants to read the article, hop over to butterflyliving.org. You can read all of Darcie's beautiful insights. But before we leave, can you share a little bit about yourself and where can people connect with you?
Sure. So I live in the deep south of Alabama with my husband, two crazy rambunctious boys, and a beautiful teen niece who lives with us now, and our little dog Cinnamon. I can't forget her. I do all kinds of things. I'm a youth director now. I also am a writer, obviously, and I write at laytonlane.com. And you can find that link when you go to the Butterfly Living thing. Most of all, I just love telling my story, my testimony, because I heard this the other day, so I'm ripping it off, but it says, what is a testimony if you don't tell it? And
That's
so
that's
I've been able to look back and see where God has brought a lot of promises in my life to fruition, a lot of answered prayers, and in only a way that he can do it, so that I know always that his hand is on it. So, but yeah.
beautiful. And Darcie's also a contributor to Life Changing Stories, which is a devotional we did together with other authors that is found on Amazon. You just type Life Changing Stories, and her writing is beautiful. So I highly encourage you to hop it over to laytonlane.com and check out more of her work. Thank you so much, Darcie, for spending this time with us.
Thank you, Mary.